Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cash Rules Podcast. My name is Keith Smith, and I'm here with my co-host,
Fabyan Roldan. What's going on, people? Peace to the planet, as I like to say. I like to steal lines. That's what I did. It's a great line. Welcome. How you doing, Keith? How's everything with you?
I'm incredible. I'm super happy to be here with you, man, and with our special guest. We have Sharif Rucker with us today. I do want to start off by just making sure that we are all aware that none of what we are discussing today should be taken as legal, financial, and or tax advice. And instead, the objective of our conversation is to just highlight some of the unspoken rules in finance, discuss why people aren't talking about these concepts, and like what we can really be doing on a practical level to change that reality in an informational, educational capacity. With that said, Fabyan, you already gave us a pretty good idea, but tell me, how you doing today?
Oh man, as I always say, blessed and highly favored. How you doing, brother? You know, things are great outside. Time to make this money.
I'm incredible and super happy to be here. So, Sharif, how's it going, man?
Can't complain, man. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a huge pleasure to have you on, and we're gonna take some time to kind of just get into. I want to hear a little bit about yourself. Tell us, where you're based, a little bit about your history, and then we're gonna dive into some real questions about your experiences and what you do. So tell us just a brief little synopsis about you.
All right, so I'm a native of Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy native. Went to local high schools in New York City, namely Boys and Girls High School. Went away to HBCU for college and extended that education in New York City and higher education. Been in education and leadership most of my life, so from the age of 14. Had a lot of opportunities to build things and create and collaborate with people on leadership designs and youth development. And so I continue to do that today. Today, I'm currently serving in the superintendent's office as the director of school wellness, student and school wellness. I've been a teacher for many years. I was an assistant principal and a principal for many years. And now I'm at the district level as a director.
And that's in New York.
That's in New York City.
Amazing. And then what HBCU did you go to?
Tuskegee University.
Okay. I'm actually kind of curious before we move on too far, how much of that experience do you think has affected your trajectory and all the stuff you've been doing in New York?
Well, I think all of it had an impact on me. I think I got to give credit to New York, though. New York really is really the designer of my success in terms of how I grew up and what I had to overcome and the supports I had. I had a lot of mentors, in Bed-Stuy. Bed-Stuy was truly a community support for me. I've worked. My father was a community activist, and every job that I had initially starting was from a local business owner from Bed-Stuy, whether it was the jewelry store that I worked at Alston's Jewelers, or I was Mr. Class and his Haagen-Dazs in the Restoration Plaza. I had an experience to work in all these places and with men of color who really developed me and spoke to my spirit, of success. And so, in terms of Tuskegee, that was just the next in line. I was also at Boys and Girls High School with Frank Mickens, legendary Frank Mickens, who passed away. Rest in peace. But he was instrumental in guiding me and developing me in terms of being the ultimate professional, and then moving from there to HBCU, being mentored by the recruitment, Erskine McKinnon, our recruitment director for that school, who really guided me in terms of what, I was, kind of walking into walls, but he really created the space for me to be successful there and supported me in, taking the risk to be in a new environment. So I think, whether it was HBCU and HBCU have a lot to do with my success, but I think it also has to do with, when you take the risk and you put yourself outside of your environment, right? And you develop, it changes the game and it makes you a little stronger. So I think that's really the part of it. The best part of it, or the heaviest influence in my life, is really taking the risk and putting yourself in situations that you're not comfortable with.
If I may, are we last name Rucker? Are you connected to the Holcombe Rucker?
Yep. So again, that's speaks to the heritage. So Holcombe Rucker is my grandfather. who started the Rucker tournament, but it wasn't really about basketball. It was about education, and it was about reconnecting students who are reclaiming students who had fallen away from education and connecting them through an organized sport. And there was a commitment there. That was an accountability system right there. You want to perform, you want to play, then you got to produce in the classroom. And so that's what he did. It became legendary. It took off, and many legends have come through there and survived the streets by being in that tournament. So it was an outdoor recreation center or outdoor PAL before they had those. They had them, but it was available to those in Harlem and around New York City who saved them.
I mean, honestly, it seems like it's legacy driven, right? Not only from the name, but for some reason, the path was made in terms of still living along the lines of that each one teach one model, right? How do you feel about that that saying, and is that something that you feel you have lived up to at this point?
Yeah, it wasn't intentional though. Kind of happened that way. It wasn't intentional to do that. I think my father kind of put a lot of that in me. And it's amazing because my siblings didn't go that way. So it's kind of amazing that I ended up in that route, and that's a blessing because it could have been something different, it could have been none of us touched it. But blessing is that we extended on the family legacy and doing that work in education and youth, activism.
Love it, man. That's super, super inspiring and gives us a lot of background around like where you're coming from. And I definitely want to come back to this towards the end because there's a ton to unpack around just the legacy, the history of people like where you come from yourself and the city in general, right? Because I grew up in Tennessee and I've been living in Florida for the past 5 years. And I can tell that, as far as the public education system goes, both of these states are very similar in the fact that there are opportunities, right, for kids to learn and be in a good, thriving environment, but that's not necessarily the standard, right? And there's not necessarily these leaders that come out of these places like really being that role model for people. And so seeing how there's so much of that in New York and like just being connected with people like you and Fabyan has been super inspiring to me to realize that there is this community and like just this type of this archetype of a human that's really out here like advocating for students and people like that. So just wanted to step back and then, tell us a little bit now, like more specifics around what are some of the educational programs that you have developed? And excuse me for my vernacular being off, but what are some of the educational programs you've developed and what has been the purpose of that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. So my earliest work was the Harlem Youth Marine Cadets. It was years ago at City College, and it was a paramilitary unit, sort of like the Boy Scouts, but it was based on the Marines. And we had the opportunity. We had a service member who was from the Marines, who was a high-ranking member of the Marine Corps, who started this kind of mentoring program called the Harlem Youth Marine Cadets. And I used to go to Harlem on Saturdays and Sundays to be in that program and train with them. And we did everything from war games to, anything you could think of. We trained, we boot camp, drills, we did the parades, we did everything. And we did that every weekend. And so by the time I left, I was a lieutenant, first lieutenant. And it taught me leadership because I had to, I was a young leader and I had to lead others. From there, it went to founding the Jackie Robinson Marching Band, which is called the Jackie Robinson Steppers now. And I was the original founding member of that, drum major, and had to go throughout Brooklyn and recruit those kids, in the housing projects and residential communities, and recruit every member that we had in that organization. It was an after-school program. We started that program, and my father was instrumental in creating the Jackie Robinson Center for Physical Culture. He was also a founder member of that venture. But what he did was he smartly kept me with him. to keep me out of trouble, right? So instead of me roaming the streets and getting in trouble where he went, I went. And so he said, I got to get you something to do. So why don't you create something on this end while I'm here working? So I'm working and I'm doing this part and you just go do that part. And so that's kind of how it went. Because that long time was just me and him. So I did that. And I was able to, I was effective in that. And that program stands today, you know, the Jack Robinson Marching Band. And then I started a nonprofit for financial literacy called We Elevate Youth, called Way. And I started that with my frat brother, because I'm part of the Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And we designed this nonprofit organization as a summer program to teach financial literacy to students in Crown Heights. So we started that program. We ran it for one season. I didn't stay long because I got picked up to start my own school, and so that stopped. And then I designed my own school. So I was able to. I had an idea in my head, called it was called SES, and I think it was called Serve, Evaluate, and Success. And it was a program, you know, something that I wrote. Or it was kind of an idea that I wrote on a post-it paper, and that post-it paper I extended that idea into a small school. But initially, the idea was supposed to be a boarding school for kids, because I really wanted to control the entire environment for students. I felt like, you know, as a public school, we have to compete constantly with what's going on in their environment. So we get them for a couple hours and then they leave us, and then they're deprogrammed from the things that we build, right? And we got to constantly, so even though we're moving three days, you know, we may move 1 day forward, but we'll lose 2 days, right? So, you know, it's like kind of we're always going backwards to try to recover what we're losing when they go home, right? And so, because the environment, you know, whether it's the home environment or it's the community that they live in, you know, the violence and things that are in the way, and the drug use and things like that, which they don't control, children don't control. Those things get in the way and become obstacles. So I adapted that model and said, you know, because I didn't do the boarding school model, I adapted it to a public school model. And I adapted that public school model using the Rucker Legacy, and also the idea of accountability for students, and that students are partners in the process of success, and that we're not just telling you what to do, but you're kind of collaborating with us to do it together, right? So you're partners in this process and co-collaborators in this work. Your voice matters to us. And so when you come in the game and you have a conversation with us, we listen and we adapt, because this is your stuff too. This is just not us operating. So that's how pretty much I ran that school. Fabyan was with me early on in the game, and so he knows how we did that work. And, you know, we had that 4 C's, which is community, collaboration, commitment, and confidence. And those 4 C's we lived by. We lived as adults, and we lived as students in that building. And it was a collaboration where we all had a stake in the game. We held ourselves accountable for what was going on in that building and outside our communities. And so that was kind of the last piece that I did. Right now, I'm working on another piece. So I'm the point person for my brother's keeper and my sister's keeper in Queens North. And so I'm designing, you know, I was given a task 3 years ago to start chapters in high schools in Queens. And so we started that out, and now we had some hiccups with the quarantine and everything, but we're coming back out strong. I'm developing a curriculum for that, you know, a social emotional curriculum, and I'm building, you know, a speaking series for that, and a lot of different things for young men and women. So I'm doing that work. And, you know, I have a partner, Jordan Barnett, who's working with me on that work. She's going to be the point person for my sister's keeper. And I also have an initiative to help me do that work, where I'm taking in student interns. So now I'm bringing in student interns into the district office to work with me, right? So a lot of times we go to the district office, we're so far away from kids, we forget what this work is about. And so now I'm bringing students into the office so that people remember what this work is about, and also raising those students up to do that work and be accountability partners in doing that work. So keeping with that philosophy and youth leadership and youth development, doing that on the intern side, doing that on the MBK and my sister's keeper side. So that's what I'm into right now.
Let me ask you, you had talked about competition and within schools or throughout schools, right? Can you elaborate more on that in terms of what do you mean by competition?
Okay. So I think students should compete. I think, you know, we need to be competitive, and I did that with the staff too. But I don't mean competitive in terms of stepping on a brother's neck and or eliminating and destroying your partner. I mean, being competitive and being the better version of yourself, right? And always putting yourself to the test and say, hey, you know, how can I be better than what I was yesterday? Is it not enough? It's not enough for me to stand still in the same zone for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. No. You were there 2 weeks ago, but you shouldn't be there 2 weeks from now. So where are you pushing yourself? And so I always created opportunities for internal competitions, but friendly competitions that pushed us to do more, right? And so my staff gave me 180%, you know, and the students gave me everything that they got on. We used to teach on steroids, right? Because we had kids coming in so behind, but we would get them to where they needed to be before they left that building, right? And that was difficult because we're talking about kids who are sometimes in 4th and 5th grade level in math and reading, right? And we were able to elevate and push the agenda of education, academic achievement very quickly, but in a space that we weren't hitting them in the head, but we were stretching them, and we helped them to feel comfortable being stretched so that they could be better versions of themselves. That's where the competition really comes into play.
Good. Thank you. I wanted to then ask you, what are the different routes to getting your programs funded?
Okay, so the MB that my brother's keeper, currently what I'm doing, those are being funded by the schools themselves. So we're designing the curriculum and the structures for it. The advisors belong to the buildings. They're being paid by the buildings. The resources that are like books or textbooks, because we're also doing a book club, we're running the book club through this, is being supported by CBOs and by the schools. So one of the CBOs working with is Common Point Queens.
And what's a CBO? Just for people who don't know.
It's a community-based organization. So community-based organizations are youth development organizations that are outside of the school building. They're nonprofits just like the schools, but they get funding from the state, you know, from federal, from local, and they also get private funding to do similar work with schools. They go into schools and they align to work either during the day sometimes, and they also do it after school and on the weekends to really create a wraparound support services for students in areas of need. And so not necessarily areas of need, because, you know, you have the YMCA, you have the PL, you have all those other things too that are available to all kids, right? Regardless of needs. So they really support us in a lot of the work that we do. And those are creating effective partnerships, right? So but the district government doesn't have the money to do that kind of work in terms of what schools do. But sometimes schools are so busy, they don't have the framework to do and the way to do the work. So we're kind of like almost like a think tank in creating the model, the mental models and the prototypes for them to take that into their schools and push an agenda without adding another piece to their plate.
Love that.
Good stuff there. Great explanation.
That is super clarifying. That illuminates a lot of what's really going on. And then, so with that in mind, like when you're coming to these partners, these schools, and you have an idea and you want to have an impact for people who want to do that, what pieces do you need to have together? What are some of the things that you need to think about to actually get these messages through in a way where people are going to understand and say, okay, this is valuable. Okay, this is something we need to do now.
I think the first thing you have to do is you have to have relationships with people. You know, ideas in itself mean nothing. It's about relationships. Who do you know? And do you have a relationship with somebody? You know, is there an alignment of thinking, an alignment of belief systems, an alignment of values? And is there a passion for the work, right? And then when you got people like that in the room, anything is possible. I think that's really the beginning and the what's the word I'm looking for? The strike or the match for all of the work. Once you got that going, then collectively you come up with a plan, right? Because no one person has a single plan that works, but it's multiple people that come together and have a plan and they say, hey, you know, here's what I'm thinking. And then, you know, constantly people weigh in on that and then you come with a comprehensive plan. And then it's the shared responsibility of how we're going to do it. One person can't do it, but it's the partners coming together and saying, let's do it. And then taking a commitment to doing that work. And then it's possible. And I think that's really where things happen first.
Okay. And so I love that. That's super helpful. Developing those relationships, like in everything that you're trying to accomplish in life, that is super important. Now, for someone who is specifically, you know, looking to connect with educators, people who are passionate about this topic. Either it's interesting now because I'm like, okay, these could be the funders, these could be the teachers, these could be the administrators. It really doesn't matter. But where do I go to actually find and make those genuine connections with people like yourself? Where do I catch you out just on a random day?
Oh, you're not gonna catch me. Brooklyn, bro.
Yes,
I'm from Brooklyn, bro. I'm not sleeping like that. You know, I got my head up. Cool. You're not catching me.
No slip-worthy actions over here.
Yeah, that's right. Not slipping, you know. So for me, how does that happen, right? So let me think. Let me put myself in that point because I've always been inside. So I'll take it back to when I try to start that when I did start the financial literacy organization in Brooklyn. So me and my brother, frat brother, we got together and we came up with this plan and we drew it out. And he's been in finance a long time. So that's what he does. So we kept talking about money and things like that. And I said, but the kids really don't know it. They really don't know how to get in this game. And by the time they get in it, it's not late, but they're not where everybody else could be, where they should be with other people, where they can be competitive in that market. Or they don't have enough knowledge and confidence by the time they become adults, right? And it becomes a lot harder to learn it as you get older, right? So we got together and he said, we wrote up this proposal when we sent it to the state. We got everything established with the state and everything. We got our company, right? And then we didn't have a space to have, our events and activities. We didn't have a space to act this out. We developed the curriculum and everything. And so we simply just walked around to like places that we figured like, well, let's go to a church. Let's go to places where they might have a center and availability because we know churches really operate on a Sunday and sometimes Saturdays in preparation for the Sunday, right? For cooking and preparing the church and things. So we said there may be space during the summer, during the week that we can use a center. And then we can get in there, we can do something with kids. So we found a place and we walked, we would hit the streets and we knocked on doors and we asked questions and we said, there's a place over here. We walk in and they said, listen, we found a place that they had a food program. And we said, okay, they serve, so it's a food program means that they serve breakfast in the morning for free. Anybody could walk in. If you're hungry, you come in and you have breakfast. It's provided, funded through the city. So they come in, they have breakfast and they come in and they have lunch. And then dinner is on themselves, but it's a way for people to eat if they're struggling with food. So we went into that center and we know that place was available. That's where people go in. And we said, but they have a window. They have the morning program and then there's a gap. We can get in the gap, and we can get in the afternoon. And so we went in there. We spoke to the director, and she said, "Yeah, we have kids coming here with their families. They have nothing to do. It'd be great to have a structured program here for them." And so that was a win. We created a schedule and then we got some flyers and we went out recruiting students to be in that space.
Love that. Love that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I just wanted to show you something, man.
Yeah, that's right.
A little old school for you. And I think this kind of leads into the next question.
Official.
In terms of, prioritizing. How do you prioritize what to spend your finances on when you are a community leader, program developer, principal? How do you choose how to spend your money if it's not already laid out?
So when you're a grassroots organizer, you have no money, or you have a social capital. You have social capital and you have political capital. Who do you know? And really everything is an in-kind service, right? So it's pretty much people not giving you cash or giving you anything that's monetary, but they're giving you resources like space. They're giving you an open door, and things like that. And so that's how a lot of it starts. And just like any business, that's how you start, right? It's pretty much somebody opening the door, allowing you to walk in and have a conversation with somebody who might pick you up and finance you. And that's kind of like how it started. Even with my school, when I started my small high school, it was an idea, but then I had to go sell it to a district, the central administration, or I had to sell it to the Department of Education. And then one of those superintendents liked the idea and picked it up, but there was no money in it until after. So it was kind of like the idea on paper. I'm selling a dream that, somebody has to believe in. and then I can make it possible after, I get the funding, so it's kind of like that.
Well, how do you secure funding then?
Okay. So, funding, I mean, funding, so there are grants that you can write, RFPs, request for proposals. So you can do that through organizations like the Department of Education. You can do that through City Hall. You can do that through the Small Business Association for the city. And you could do those RFPs. So they have RFPs for different services, and you just match your organization to the service, and you put in an RFP, right? And RFP is very specific in terms of how many students you want to serve, with the outcomes for the service. The state might already give you all the service, or the funder might already tell you what the outcome should be. And then how do you build into that? How are you going to get there, right? And it's a bidding process, right? So there's multiple organizations that put in their ideas, and then it's about, whoever's screening it, who they feel is the most interesting and could be the most successful in that work. And then sometimes not about any of that, sometimes about relationships, right? And are you connected to that? So if you're connected to that organization and they know your work, then they put you on, because they say, well, I've seen your work in other things. So I know that if you're involved with this organization, then it's going to be possible. And so also it's about, again, that social capital that gets you the money that you want. So that's that money. But then there's other monies, right? There's private monies. There are people that want to give away money, right? Those are individuals sometimes that want to adopt something, right? And when they adopt something because of something that happened personally to them, right? And so they have a mission, or they're driven through some sort of passion. That person can also fund your organization. And so sometimes they give you a check every year. They give you a check. I went to school on an individual like that who just paid my tuition. They always gave me that money because they wanted to, support a young Black male in higher education. And so they gave me a check. And so there are people like that. We had a student in our school who had a private donor come in and sort of financially adopt her and pay for her 4 years of school, just because of her personal story of being an immigrant, right? And this student being an immigrant and not having the support and the paperwork, and then pushing that student through and she's a nurse today, and so, and still in school. So that's another area. And then the other one is fundraisers, right? There's fundraisers, having events and fundraising for it, in honor of something that's happening, whether it's food desert, or it could be homelessness, it could be adopted. So we did adopt students for Christmas. So there are a lot of different things that you could fundraise, because some people want to support, they don't know how to support, but if you have an idea and an initiative that they believe in, they'll give you money towards that. And so that's another option, so that's those three options. Of course, you have organizations like, we think of Coca-Cola and Pfizer, we take them for granted, but they give a lot of money to people who ask, and they have something that they're looking to do that impacts community, right? And so we know that with the whole Black Lives Matter, there's been a major initiative to support Black businesses and support youth development, right? And so you have to be set up to receive that, but it's there. And that's from private corporations.
Love that. That point at the very end there is super, super valid. Like being ready, because a lot of the times, so I work with this man, he's an old school cat here in Miami, and he's a broker dealer. So he tells me, one of the most important things is like being positioned for the money, right? Like we can complain about how we're not getting money or how it's not there. And really, like, if you look for where it's at and you position yourself to receive the money that's allocated toward what's supposed to be, what's supposed to be spent on, then you're putting yourself in a position to win. So it's really a lot of the times, how do we actually find where the money is, right? That's find the money and then understand where the money is designed to go and design yourself around that. And then it's a lot harder for people to say no to you, because then they have to really be, saying no for whatever other reason, right? So just wanted to highlight that. I really appreciate that. And so I do also want to transition a little bit. Let's get back into some of the educational, practical value that you can provide to us, because you've been in the field, you've really been on the ground with kids, connecting with them, changing their lives, right? So talk to us a little bit about, you also brought up the fact that, sometimes kids don't have the confidence around certain issues, especially things like financial literacy. What is the importance of confidence, and what can you really do to give the kids and the students that you're working with this confidence that they need?
Yeah, I think, the thing, a lot of times with confidence, it has to do with having the exposure, right? A lot of times when we lack confidence is because we haven't had the opportunity to experience it, right? And it's an unknown. It's something that, I've never had a connection to. And so it's important that if you want to build confidence, then you have to put students in it. You have to expose them to it. You have to give them opportunities to connect to it in a friendly way, entry points. You kind of like, one of the things that I used to do when I started my school was that in order to, it wasn't enough just talking, but in order to expand my students' horizon of cultural excellence and academic excellence, I had to take them to those experiences. So that was a college tour, right? Going away and experience a college tour. It was going to Broadway plays, right? It was going to the city and looking at companies like Google, right? And experiencing these environments. It was going to Habitats for Humanity and going overseas in Costa Rica and places like that and experiences community service and volunteerism. Those things, when you have that going on, it take you out of your zone of off the block, out of your home, and it exposes you to more than you know. And all of a sudden, when you come back, you're a little bigger. Your container's a little bigger. You can take in a little more. Your experience is a little bit. You're not as narrow. You're a lot more broader in your perspective and how you view the world and the impact that you can have on it because you've seen it, right? And you know that you can be in that space and live and survive in it. Not survive in it, but thrive in it.
Well, that's huge. Just this idea of expanding the idea of what's possible, period, right? And I think travel for sure is something that just takes that to a whole nother level, right? Because when we grow up in our communities, we see the worst and sometimes we see the best, and then that's it, right? But in reality, all you got to do is just zoom out and just zoom out. And both of those experiences are totally different things. And so I love that the idea of travel.
You're totally right there. That exposure does expand the learning experiences as well as opens up the concept of anything now in terms of just, we're talking about inclusivity, diversity, everything. So now I'm open to different heritage. I'm open to different foods, different books, different studies of work, and etc. Those experiences that you kind of bring up are lifelong experiences that resonate with everybody. I wanted to then actually kind of transition into a different space. We talked about a lot of participation in terms of students or participants. But what about parents or guardians? How do you see them, and what is the impact of parents and guardians, and how do you involve them in the work that you do?
Yeah, most parents, and I believe this, most parents, their intention for the intent for the children, or their hope, their prayers for the children is mostly positive, right? It's mostly, I want to improve upon, our household, our name. I want you to be better than what we were, right? So, but I think that a lot of it is a lack of know-how, right? There is no manual for parenting, and so whatever habits you come to the table with, and I'm talking about habits that are stimulated by the moment and they just come out, right? I'm not talking about the how you try to pretend to be, but I'm talking about when you're at the moment and it's in pulse, what habit comes out of you? And that's the impact that, adults and parents have on children, right? So if we have some of those behaviors that we haven't checked and we're not working through, we're not learning and trying to improve on, those things are going to come out on our children, right? and our children extend and take that somewhere else. So I think with, how to help parents in this work is that they're not to be left out. They're partners in the work, right? And we have to teach them, and not teach them how to type. No, teach them how to be with their families, teach them how to be with their children, how to be with each other, how to monitor themselves, how to find peace in themselves, right? How to self-manage, so you're stressed. I understand you're stressed. So what are you doing about being stressed? Because I know you work 3 jobs and I know you have 3 children and I know your time is, and you have no, so what do you do? How are you healing yourself in this process? Because you're hurting, right? And we know hurt people. So we have to give them like these resources and opportunities and experiences again to have moments of peace, whether that's meditation, whether that's, exercise, whether that's, taking opportunities to walk, whether that's membership groups where they get together and they have support groups. I'm struggling with this. How do you do that? So like we need to talk, and I need to know that other people are struggling with me, that I'm not alone in this work. That I'm not, I shouldn't feel helpless and feel alienated because I think I'm alone because I'm in my house experiencing this and I'm supposed to be all-knowing because this little person is looking up at me, but I don't know. And I need help, and being okay with saying I need help. And so parents have to have support. They have to have support groups. They have to have opportunities to learn. They have opportunities to experience and do, and so they have to learn something, try it out, and say, hey, this is how it worked for me. I'm not sure if I was successful with this. Well, what did you receive from it? I received this and this and this. Well, all right, so try this and go back in and do it this way.
It's like the evolution of in terms of the community. The old saying, a village raises a child. This is just the evolution of that, right? To a sense.
That's right. And so, like as a parent, when you become a parent, your learning doesn't stop. In fact, your your children grow you too, right? They can grow you negatively or they can grow you positively, right? But they grow you, they force you to evolve. Has to happen.
I love that. Immediate, as soon as you become a parent, you become a student. And that's just the reality, right? I love that. Humility we've talked about in previous podcasts, just being able to kind of step back and like ask for help and be okay with not having all the answers to things is something that can potentially hold a lot of our people back as well, or has been, right? Like, and it's interesting because this is a life thing, but we've talked about it in terms of finance before. We had a man who came on who went through a bankruptcy and he didn't know what to do. And he was not comfortable about reaching out to someone to ask, what do I do about the fact that I have no money and then I'm going broke and I'm, going bankrupt. And so, yeah, I love that point. And I love that it spans, across just talking about finances. It's about education. It's about the way that we live and how to really be the best version of yourself in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to move forward just a bit because I want to hear about, you're in the hub, the biggest place I feel like for where people are paying attention to education, where it matters the most, and where really the trends are being set around what the standards are. So tell me, what are the trends that you're seeing around financial literacy in your community right now?
So I'm not seeing any trends. I'm seeing a lot of questions about how to do it. I'm seeing an understanding that there's a need for it, and there's a belief that we have the belief there's a not a belief, but there's a evidence that we have a gap in terms of financial literacy, but we haven't created the space for it. It's not in a curriculum. It's not really. Some schools have designed it as an elective, and that's based on their own work. Some schools have a CTE model for it, which is a cooperative technical education, but it's not everywhere and it's not readily available. It is not a standard that is in the schools, right? It's not like home economics or any of those things that we used to have years ago. It's absent in the school, and there's kind of like the way the system is built. It's kind of like it's built with they'll get that from somewhere else, right? but there is nowhere else to get it because there's no other place to really, I mean, there's really no design element. That there are a few pieces out there and resources that provide that, but there's no adult learning that I can get financial literacy readily available for people at public school, at a public school experience, right? At no cost, right? If I want to get financial literacy, I have to pay for it. But the problem is, I have money that I'm misspending, and then you want me to be smart enough to pay for something like that. So, that's kind of like, it's really not the right place for that to be. It needs to actually be anchored in school, right? It needs to be anchored in when they get into elementary school, they get into the lower level, when they go into middle school. It needs to be anchored all the way through. When do we have a conversation with kids in a school about a checkbook, about a credit card, about a debit card, about using your phone for transaction, about monitoring and bookkeeping your own monies, right? When do we have those conversations, our spending habits, saving habits, investments, diversifying, when is it right to get a car and a phone and do we need a phone and do we need this kind of phone, and all of those things that, because we're in a consumer market, right? And everybody's got to get, and everybody's got to consume. But, so schooling and the consumer market teaches us to give everything away. When we make it, we give it away. It's a modern day feudal society. We work the land for a certain amount of time and we give everything up. And then in turn, we get a few pieces of corn and vegetables and things like that, and we consume those. But you're not breaking out of that sharecropper mentality, right? You're not breaking out of that space of being where you are, manning that and extending that to something where you have excess. We're not creating excess. We're creating dependency.
So do you feel like the education system is doing injustice around financial literacy fully?
Yeah, I think definitely it's an injustice, but I think it's just not enough recognition for it to be there, or importance to be there. It's when we talk about curriculum development or standards, that has to be part of the game, because we got to start looking at statistics in terms of where people are financially when they get out of school, right? When they get out of college. What's the financial help? Just like we do stats on graduation rates and we do stats on test scores. What about financial health scores? What about financial, we need to have some sort of assessment for financial.
I like that. A little financial assessment for kids. That's awesome.
Where's the financial health of where we are? We get out of high school. What do we know? And where do we take that? Because when you go to college, that's a financial investment. Want to start a business, that's a financial investment. So if we say career and college readiness, that should be a part of the conversation, because you are about to sign a major contract on that loan or that grant that you take, and the monies that you have to commit to that process. Or if you start a business, you get a personal loan or use your own money that you saved up. You need to have need to have some know-how in terms of how to extend yourself or create that excess in those two opportunities.
Big bomb drop right there, for sure. Because like you said, because to me, it seems too like this, it's obvious, right? So I want to understand, what are the conversations? Because it's clear that if I'm going to go to college, I need to pay for that, right? And this is something that's an American problem too, right? It's the standard. You pay for school and you get the degree, and then you're in debt and you're supposed to work, pay off the debt, create a better life for yourself. So how is it that we know this, and we know that people don't have access to the information that they need to be able to make these decisions around higher education and things like that? What is the conversation in the educational community around why are we not doing this?
You know why? Because we know what we know. We went to school and were educated that way. And so, listen, that's what I know. So I stay in the lane that I know. I teach what I know, right? And so you get people that are educated the same way that are adults coming back and teaching the same way, because that's what they know. So we're gonna lean on in the impulse, in the moment, we're gonna lean on what we know. And so that's how we perpetuate. We continue to do that. We want to do it, but we don't have enough space to take the risk to do it and to grow and extend ourselves to do it, because risk means time too, right? So I got to take a risk and I got to make boo-boos and I got to make errors, but I have to keep pushing to stretch and strengthen the container for this work. Because I mean, but we have to do it. If we stay within the walls of our comfort zone, then we'll never do it. And we'll continue to have the problem. But we're being trained over and over again to be consumers.
That brings up a good question then, right? College. How important is it for this time period? And what do you think about the idea of sending all kids to college or, trade school, etc.?
I think, there we go again, right? It's a financial decision. But I'm not trained on financial decision making. I'm just taught that I'm supposed to do things, be compliant, right? And I just go and do without thinking about financial decisions, right? So what decision do I need to make? Am I going to go, the days of being a social scientist and going to school for sociology and things like that is over. You cannot afford to go that route and get your returns. You can't do it. You can't, right? And even some business, degrees, you can't afford to go that route and get returns. Now you got to be looking at college as like a business. You got to say, hey, if I go through this program, what is the guarantee that I'm going to get returns on the money that I spent in your program? That's how we got to make those decisions. What is your graduation rate? If I go into your program, are you going to ensure that I get out of there? You can't, we going to schools that got 14% graduation rate. You just taking my money with no investment in my money. I'm paying you. You better ensure that I get returns, right? So if I'm going to invest in you, then you got to make sure I get returns, that I'm going to come away with something. That's not happening. It's not happening. We're going in compliantly, right? Going into these programs and not making the right decisions in terms of, if it's college, what are the returns on this degree? Do I have enough information to make that financial decision? If it's a CTE program, can I be a barber and sustain the rent in New York City? Maybe it's not being a barber. Maybe it's being a barbershop owner of several units, right? So that I can sustain my apartment in New York City, right? It's not enough to just be the barber or a cosmetologist and do nails, right? You got to be the shop owner to make it in this city, New York City, right? So making those financial decisions, we can push CTE, and I sound good and all of that, but it's got to be a little bit more than just the CTE and the skill. It's not only skill, it's I can work for somebody and get in the union. Okay, if that's part of it, that's good, great, okay, for plumbing or whatever. But if I'm going to be a cosmetologist or a barber, is there enough income for me to sustain myself in the city? Or do I need to learn being a barber and then learn also being a shopkeeper and running my own service or my business? So I need to know how to do a business plan. I need to know how to get a business license. I need to get a tax ID number. I need to do all those things. I need to know how to get startup capital to get this thing started. And then I need to know how to market. I need marketing. I need to know how to recruit people to get in my business. That's a lot of skill sets that are not being taught to be a barber.
So let me ask you, is it then now the question, is it financial literacy that should be taught, or it should be when you get to a certain age, when you talk about CTEs, right? Are we talking about more of trying to add in the entrepreneur type of curriculum so that they understand business management?
Well, if you ask me, and I'm not in the airport industry and I'm not in an industry for CTE, I'm going to be the wrong person to ask. Because I'm going to say what I think, but I don't know if that's going to be true. Well, if being an air traffic controller is the thing and is growing as an industry, then that person needs to come in and say, this is what we need from people. This is what needs to be designed. And this is the trajectory for this work, right? And this is where it needs to happen. And then we got something going on. But if educators don't work with partnerships in corporate America in terms of what's needed out there, and we do it internally and say, hey, let's just create a lot of this stuff. The stuff may not be what the industry needs to extend itself. And then we got the gray area. How do we prepare kids for the gray area? The areas of entrepreneurship that are coming, that we don't know how it works. on how it's going to happen, how it's going to be done. What skills do they need to fit in those industries? We don't know. But how do we create the space in schools to be critical thinkers that they can figure it out when they get out of the schools?
That was a great answer. I appreciate that. That was awesome.
Yeah. And like, Fabyan, you said something that really just sparked an idea in my head around like entrepreneurship. And like just throughout this past little bit of the conversation, it's like skill acquisition. Like, what do you actually need to do to learn how to learn? And I had a good conversation with this Harvard fellow a few months ago, and she said that was the thing that was the most important to her success. She said, my ability to learn how to learn has been the number one thing that has led to my success in life. And I just thought that that was so powerful. And I just think that it was something that kind of plays into what you guys were saying around, you know, it could be anything that's actually needed tomorrow. So how do you actually equip yourself to be ready to learn and to prepare yourself to fit that new role? And it almost feels like that's something that could provide a lot of value to youth. And in my life, I would love to have just a 1 semester seminar on like, this is what you have available to you today to go out and learn something that you want to learn. And like, here's the library, here's the address, here's what you actually need to do to like get in there and do what you need to do. Here's the payment if you need to, you know, just like simple things, but that actually can go a long way for when you actually want to do something. But I'll step back. I think, Fabyan, you had some things you wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no, I think you're right on point, right? It seems like we talked about development and the change of education over time. It took decades, took generations to study, to really understand that, hey, we need to probably take, and Sharif, I think you back me up on this, that we need to study these individuals in a certain kind of way, what's going on. And then you look at them, you're like, oh, hold up. They don't know how to take notes. They don't know how to study for a test. So now let's start to implement now these courses of study note-taking, time management. I think that is the next step, key for where you were standing, is that, hey, now before we even get to that, the first step is, how are you gathering the information? Are you truly taking it in? And maybe that's the next step of education, is really, hey, looking back at, we talked over years, Sharif, in terms of levels, but maybe going back to that concept is the best way in order to actually formulate the best curriculum around certain individuals or groups. And would you agree to that?
Definitely. You know, levels, entry points, you know, where do people get in, fit in, and make the world go round? There has to be a space and a gap for everyone. Complicated to do though. Complicated to do because people are coming from so many different experiences and places, you know, but we have, you know, we are in a place where people are, we looking at like potentially a financial crisis, right? The days of retirement is over, you know, when people work 25, 30 years and clock in. Now, those industries are available, but limited, right? Everybody can't get into it. What about those backpackers who are changing industries every 5 years, 4 years? How are they investing their monies so that, you know, Social Security is not the sole income that they get, right? But how do they start to enhance and support themselves? When I look around and I see some senior citizens who have just worked on, you know, industries where they build their retirement, you know, and they're living on Social Security, you know, the cost of living has outgrown Social Security. And so it's difficult just to pay my utilities and to, you know, buy food and warm clothes and update, you know, keep my house intact so that I don't have leaks in the roof, and I got to be able to pay for that. I don't have the money for that. I'm living off of Social Security. You know, a lot of people, talked to one of my neighbors, he works in corporate America, and we talked about, he says, you know, I can't retire yet because I need a certain amount of money to retire. So he has to put in a certain amount of money for a length of time that he believes, if he can predict the economy after retirement, will sustain him and his family in retirement for the rest of his life.
You get caught up like the drug game. You can't do that. You know, it's like a drug dealer sitting there talking about, I'm putting away a stash so I can get out the game. And you start to realize the more you stay in it, the worse you are. I like that. That's awesome. That's a great analogy there. I love that.
Love it. Love it.
Cash rules everything around me. Bill, y'all.
Hey, Keith, how we
Yeah.
looking? How you looking?
Looking good, looking good. I want to get a couple more out before we move into the next section because I do value your opinion on this stuff, Sharif. Like so people who once again have this passion, have this direction, they want to be in communities, they want to do stuff for kids and youth or even adults who need placement, things like that. Where can I go to really study and learn about? And I think for you, it's like, it's people, right? Like there's certain people that maybe I could go and study to become more of that leader or to have these programs that I'm pushing forward. Where do I go to learn about this kind of stuff?
Well, I think you're doing it right now with cash rules, right? I think that you're putting yourself out there, you're exposing yourself, and you're having these conversations, right? And you're creating these opportunities to learn from seasoned people. And I think you build a body of knowledge where you'll have an inventory of know-how in terms of how to get things done. You know, so I think this is the right step. I think you are moving in that direction by putting yourself out there. I think you guys are taking the risk, right? You're stretching yourself and putting yourselves in comfortable spaces and learning and asking a lot of questions.
I love it.
Rules.
I love it.
Oh, it's always good to ask questions.
And then I definitely, you've been in education for a long time. So your whole life, you've seen a lot of the technological changes, right? That have happened even, past 5 years. I'm sure it's been a big shift. Where do you see technology changing the educational process right now?
Yeah. Oof. We holding on tight, but this remote world is real. It's real. The younger students are able to grasp it more than the older students. I think it's going to be a reality that we're going to have those options. Those programs are out there; they're available. My worries is that we don't end up in terms of there was a movie called Play One Play or something like that. It was One Play Play One Play something like that. But it was about a situation where we don't even come out. We just kind of live in these bubbles and these boxes, and everything that we deal with is through the screen. And our relationships are through avatars, right? And so Meta with Facebook is attempting to do that, right? So I can create whoever I want to be. I can be that avatar and live in this space and create and make money and all the things that I want to do, and biologically stay in one zone. How does that play out on us? Are we healthy? Are we mentally healthy? Are we physically healthy? Are we obese in a space where we're not moving around and socializing with each other and competing in sports and hands-on activities? And I don't know, it's important for kids to play, to exercise and to move. I mean, there's benefits to this, right? There are benefits. It streamlines things. It makes it easier. Things move quicker. You make decisions faster, but then there's consequences for everything. What are the consequences on the human body, on our biology, and our ability to collaborate and live together, right? In a real sense. How do we take care of our environment? Are we taking care of our environment, or we just forget about that because we can live in a bubble with AC and air filters and all of the things that we have around us, preserve our space and never have to come outside of it? The more that we isolate ourselves, the more difficult it is to live together. The more that we have to get on the train and we have to be in spaces and we have to bump and we have to negotiate ourselves and our bodies and our biology, the more that we have greater tolerance for one another. I think part of the issue with tolerance today is that, and intolerance that we have today is that we're not spending enough time and exposure with each other, right? In a real way, in a physical way. We get to hear what we want to hear. We get to self-select in and out of stuff. We don't hear difficult conversations that we disagree with. I could just turn on the radio, or I could just go to my satellite radio and just listen to what I want to listen to, and never have to go into the other side, whether it's the right or the left or other opposing opinions. I don't have to have experience that at all. I could encapsulate myself in an ideal environment that does not work when I step outside the house and have to share space with another person. So my take on technology, there are good points to it. There's some negative points to it. I think there's a place for school. I think there's a place for people to congregate and to be together and the fellowship. And I think, for growing bodies and child development, it's important for us to interact, and to stimulate one another in a physical way.
It's like how to use the tool, right? You can use the hammer either to beat a nail or beat somebody in the head,
Right. That's right.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love it. I love it.
And I think that movie is Ready Player One.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay. Cool. And
Look, great movie.
I actually haven't even really fully seen it. I remember it coming out though.
Yeah, so we got that movie, you got Hunger Games. Those are references, man. Social isolation. So
Love it. Fabyan? Is it
Yeah,
time?
yeah. I think it is. How you feeling?
I think it's time.
Yes,
Cash.
yes.
So
It's that
Sharif,
rapid round.
So we got a rapid round, Sharif. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna throw a couple questions at you. The first thing that comes to mind, let us know your thoughts. Don't think too hard.
Okay.
All right, no, this is no judgment zone. Okay, cool. So first off, what is money?
Leverage.
Love that. And then who do you look up to the most, dead or alive?
Wow.
Giving you stumpers here.
Yeah, I promise
Let's see.
And we'd like to say for the viewers, this is not limited at all. So I just want to tell you, you know what I mean? So this is just,
Yeah.
pop comes off the head, if that's the person.
Yeah.
And there might be a list.
Yeah, you can adjust, you can,
The one that passed away is definitely Frank Mickens.
Love that, yeah.
I don't know. See, that changes for me because I'm always extending myself, so I'm looking to learn. So it's like these mentors change for me. Guess I'll need more time for that one.
Yeah,
like that.
and you know
I like
what?
that, though.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer because I actually, before we end this, I want to come back to that. But tell me, what is your favorite book?
Oh, so The Violent Conspiracy was one of my favorite books.
And what's that about?
So it was about a young brother who played the violin. He played classical music, and he had to experience racism trying to play in that industry. He didn't have the support of his mother. His mother said, "Hey, come on, Dad, what are you doing? That's not going to make any money. You need to go work at Walmart and make that money." He's like, "What are you talking about?" And he was able to play the violin and make like at weekend events like $1,000, and he made a lot of money in it. And an extraordinary book. But the violin that he inherited from his grandmother was actually given to him from a slave owner who gave it to his great grandfather because of his service to the household. But then the family came back and said, "Oh, that's our violin. You have no right to it." "What do you mean he gave it to you?" The violin was worth like something like, I don't know, $5 million, $10 million, something like that. He didn't know it was worth that much. So the family gets a lawyer and they want to sue him to get that violin back. And it's just like, he's going through this being great. And then the racism and the bias in being in the orchestra, and then he goes to Russia, of all places, right? The only black guy here. And he's dealing with all the Russians who were like tacticians on the violin, right? Just perfect. But he plays with energy and passion that's original. And he really won the competition, but they didn't give it to him because it was his first time being a colored person in that competition. So there was no way he was going to get it. He knew that, and they kind of like gave him second place. But he was really the first place winner. It was a lot of things going on, but it was a phenomenal story. The way it was very descriptive, the way he explained the music, made us think about it. And I happen to be a part of a book club. Again, I'm a starter. I started a book club for Black men, and we read that book. And so it was one of our best books and scored like like a 95 for us.
And what's the name of the book again?
It's called A Violin Conspiracy.
Okay. And then is this a fiction or nonfiction book?
Nonfiction is his first book. The brothers from Brooklyn.
Wow. Wow.
Phenomenal book. I mean, like, wow. We were like, wow. And it was something that we would have never picked up, but we happened to pick it up and was like, wow, this was a really good read. It's one of our best books.
Amazing. And then next rapid round question. Do you have a favorite podcast that you like to listen to?
Of course, my own. I mean, Pushing Boundaries. I got to listen to mine. I love it because I have I have a series called Black Man, Black Man, My Story. And I speak to different individuals who have interesting stories, and they share their lifespan of their stories in terms of where they were and where they are now. I have that. I have, mental health checks in that. I have also workplace issues, how to resolve those in conflicts. I just speak to that in that. And, so I love that first. In terms of second, as a podcast, I listen to several. Let's see. Like a lot.
You ain't got the front. I know Cash Rules is up there.
No, will be my favorite too. Cash Rules. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I think that, at this point, Sharif, you brought in so much great knowledge. I think you're gonna give a whole bunch of inspiration.
And I do want to take a second because I feel like you brought up Frank Mickens. Mm-hmm. And for me, this is my first time hearing that name, unfortunately. And I know that there's so much that you can say, but I just want to also just give you a moment to tell us like a little bit about who he is and what he did, because I think this is a great way to kind of end the podcast as well. It's just like, who was that figure that really had that impact on you?
Yeah, he was a champion for children. He was a champion for children of color. He was a Black man who stood on his own feet, despite the systems or the Department of Education, some of the policies that went against our success. He was one who stood on his own feet and made his own rules in an environment where we needed those rules to be the way they were. It was a school of 5,000 students, no scanning, barely had any fights in the building, but he had a presence of men in that building, of men of color all over that building. And he spoke to you like he was your parent when he was in that building. And he held you accountable, and he held the staff accountable. And when you went in that building, it was a place that you felt extremely safe, and you had to be respectful of the adults in those classrooms because they were like your parents, right? He took an interest beyond just your academic learning. One of the things he did for me was when we had to wear shirt and ties, like 3 days out of the week. He required us to do that. We thought it was ridiculous, but he gave us exposure so we could feel comfortable wearing shirt and ties. If you never wear a shirt and a tie and you have to sit there and someone says, go to an interview, you're gonna feel uncomfortable wearing it. You're gonna feel uncomfortable leaving your house and get on a train driving because you're gonna feel some kind of way. I look funny with a shirt and a tie, but we got comfortable with that. So it became our way of life, He extended that. I remember when I went to work for him as his teacher after being a student there, and he says to me, I come in casual, maybe a polo, some jeans. He says, Sharif, hey, I want you to go look in those bags over there. They were black garbage bags. I said, why? He says, look at the bag over there. Look in the bag, there were shirts in there, dress shirts. Okay. He said, pick as many as you want. I said, why? He said, pick as many as you want. Those are designer shirts. I got everything in there. I got polo, I got everything. Pick what you want. So I pick out 5. He said, that's all you need? He said, no, pick out another 5. He says, go another bag with it. The ties there. I said, okay, go get the ties. He said, match the ties to your shirts. Make sure you like the way it looks. He says, I want you to always be ready. Those are yours. You own those now. I want you always to be ready for opportunity. When opportunity presents itself, when we say, well, stay ready, I want you to be ready. He said, you never know when it is, but it'll be available to you. And I want you to be ready to walk through those doors. Change the game. Stuff like that. There were many stories of stuff like that.
I live by those words to this day. You've taught me that years ago, and opportunity, that word of opportunity, and allowing opportunity to come and having a face and presence for any opportunity to come. Yeah, I remember you saying that. And it's crazy that's where it came from. I love it. Full circle.
That's where it came from.
Wow. That is super duper powerful. That comes down to the concepts of really like the most successful people in the world, that can acknowledge that there's also a certain level of luck, right? That always comes with everything too. And so being prepared, right? Mentally, physically, he said, even to you, right? Like, this is what you need to be.
And having an etiquette for it. Which do you know? You have social etiquette, code switch. When to be on, when it's cool to be with the homies, and then like you got to switch. My language has to change. My disposition has to change. I have to lean in. I have to show interest, right? I can't. I remember that we were starting a football program at a school last year. We're doing a collaboration between two schools, and we were merging them to do football together. The coach comes in the room to the other school to recruit their kids, and he's there, and all the kids are sitting, and some kids slouched down, some kids got the do-rag on, the hoodies on, and and he said simply, the kids say, so when are tryouts? He said, you're already in trials right now. He said, based on how you sitting in your chair, how you look, your whole disposition, it's telling me, do you want to be a part of this? Where you want to be? Is this important to you? You're being interviewed and trying out right now. And you saw the kids do like this, sit up in their chairs, hoods came off, do-rags, yes, sir. And they, yes, sir. I'm like, yes, sir. What's going on with these boys in here? Yes, sir. I'm like, okay, all right. But he changed the whole game because they knew, they were like, wait a minute, we're trying to do this. And they got prepared, but they should have been prepared when they walked in that room. But they learned the lesson. The next time they went in that room, there were different people.
And it's crazy. I love that you said, yes, code switching is part of it, but I think the real thing is professionalism. We do code switch. That is the nature of it, nature of the beast of any business we walk into, men of color, minority individuals, anybody who falls into that grouping. But you're right on point. It's more about that, being that opportunity, having the ability to understand, I need to dress professionally. I need to come in here at my top level. If I'm looking for top dollar, I'm going to show you in my presence and my character, top dollar. And that starts there, is sitting up straight and, having clear voice, not having gum in your mouth, or not, as you stated, no hoodie over your head, no do-rag. It's just you're sitting there ready for any occasion. And sometimes, yes, a suit and tie is not for every occasion, but that doesn't mean you still can't dress professionally, as you were stating too, And I love that. I love that story.
If I had my hoodie on like this for the session, this conversation might have went different.
Yeah.
If I sat like this, right, our dialogue would have been different.
Mm-hmm. Totally different. I understand that completely.
And I gave you short answers too.
Because you don't have the breath to do it. You're all scrunched up. That's why you're not using your lung capacity to the fullest extent.
Man, like, no, man, talk, articulate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Feel comfortable. Take that risk.
Love it.
And I just want to touch on, you did definitely say you're working on some stuff outside of your everyday 9 to 5 that deals with a lot of mental health. And I just wanted you to touch on that one time in terms of the importance of mental health, especially in the Black community, especially Black men, especially, right? Hispanic men who don't consider themselves sometimes being people who need mental health assistance. They don't see the struggle as being hazardous to their overall bodies. What do you say to that?
I say we're not superhuman. That's for DC and Marvel.
We
are blood, flesh, bone, and when we walk out, we don't have jeans on, we have clothes on, and we hit a piece of concrete, it cuts us, right? When we go outside, it gets cold. It has an impact on us environmentally. But you start adding on environmental factors like racism and bias and systemic racism and environmental hazards. That's another attack on your body. Now, we're just not talking about the weather now. We're talking about other things that are impacting you. constantly. How are you recharging? How are you letting those things go? How are you renewing yourself? You know, what are you doing? Because as it's coming at you, you have to be doing something to resolve it, because it's going to make you sick, right? And so you have to figure out, what do you do on the other end of it to relieve those attacks, those assaults on your body that's constantly putting stress and strain on you? How are you giving yourself the space? How are you choosing yourself first and saying to yourself, I love me because I'm me? And not saying because I love me and saying those words, but yeah, starting with I love me because I'm me, but also showing yourself that you love you by the way you eat, by exercising, by doing things for your mental health in terms of meditating or seeing a counselor and just having somebody to talk to. Maybe it's not somebody in your household to talk to because they got too much stuff to say and criticism that doesn't extend you but shut you down. So I just want somebody to listen to me. So go to a counseling service. You know, there's free ones all over the place, and there's stuff that is picked up on your insurance. And having a session once a week and saying, hey, here's what's on my mind. I don't really want an opinion, but here's what's on my mind. I just want somebody to listen.
I love that. I appreciate that, man. That was
Mhm.
awesome.
Love it, man. Yes. This has been an absolutely incredible episode. To be honest with you, I've gotten chills multiple times throughout just listening to some of the great points you've made and knowing where it's coming from. And I just wanted to say, this conversation has been a huge part of why I think we wanted to do this. One of the things you said was, we only know what we know. And so a huge part of this is expanding on what it is that we do have access to as far as knowledge around why we're stuck. Some people are stuck. Some of us are stuck. And in this state of thinking, in this state of finances, and it all comes back to this and how we are prepared mentally for the things that are coming into our lives. So I think this has just been an incredible conversation. I'm going to shut up. Thank you for being here, Sharif. Thank you, Fabyan, for helping to put this together as well. And thank you. This has been great.
Sharif, can you let our viewers know where they can find you, contact you, if they wanted to follow up?
Yep, I'm at Pushing Boundaries, PUSHENBOUNDARIES. So you can find me on all major platforms, podcast platforms, or you can send me at pushingboundaries@gmail.com if you have a question for me.
Amazing.
Talk that talk.
Yes, sir.
Hey man, this was a pleasure. Honestly, we said you was gonna come in wealth of knowledge. We always say this, but as you say it, Keith, I did get chills, man. It took me back in time with Sharif. I call him I call him Ruck. I just gotta say, the legacy in which you are putting out there, that footprint from across the boroughs of New York City, it's out there, man. You're now located working out of Queens. You started out in Brooklyn. You started your first school in the South Bronx. This is just amazing. Your journey is one to really read up on. I can't wait to read your story at some point. And I look forward to tuning in to Pushing Boundaries in the next podcast episode. So thank you very much. I know, Keith, what are you saying, bro?
All I got to say is thank you to all of the people that came in to observe in this conversation with us. So thank y'all for watching. This has been another episode of Cash Rules. Have a great rest of your day, night.
Dollar bill, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.